some businesses will never need AI. Everybody says you need AI today to be relevant. There's some businesses that just don't need AI.
Yeah.
But most businesses will benefit from AI. Stuff that we invest in is it's new technologies.
Yeah.
Or new industries. Like, so it's a tough sell to get any of that going. So you need to have a very strong commercial aspect to you. There's still a lot of people who don't actually know or understand the business environments. Can I get my money out? Is it protected? Am I going to have to pay a bribe to do business?
Yeah.
Those are simple questions.
Okay, so Tahir Mullins, where are you from?
I'm from South Africa, Cape Town actually, so this is home.
Okay.
I've watched it change over the years, but yeah, this is home.
How's it been? What's like the biggest thing that you've seen change?
You're like good or bad?
Both, I guess, either.
That's a really good question. I think the one thing that I've seen change, right? When I was young, like going to the beach was a big thing. So we would take a taxi or bus to that sort of Mowbray, Cape Town train line. And then we would hop on a train from there and go to False Bay, Simonstown, wherever. And it was nothing to do that. I mean, it was a trip, it was an event, whatever. But, safety-wise, it was nothing to do that. Now you got to look over your shoulder to do that. So that's been something like safety on trains has changed quite a bit. A lot more cars on the road, partially due to probably safety and partially due to because of load shedding and then COVID, like the looting and the vandalism of the infrastructure. So I think the thing that's also encouraging though, because I spent a year in South Korea.
Okay.
And when I came back, I was like, wow, everything looks cleaner. And to this day, everything is still a lot. It's like there's a lot more maintenance going on, keeping the city beautiful, which is a nice change as well.
All right. So you born and raised here in Cape Town, and you did your education here in Cape Town as well. How was the UCT experience?
The UCT experience is interesting, right? Because I grew up in a township, right? Then now I got a scholarship to go to a private school, which was a boys only school.
Okay.
So I went from one extreme to another extreme. And then when I went to UCT, both of those extremes were mixing together and they were females. So, then there were all these different cultures from around the world. So it was actually, my experience at UCT was great. It was eye-opening. I tried out a lot of new things. Met a lot of new different people. I think my way of thinking really expanded at UCT, to be honest. But yeah, the UCT experience is great. It laid the foundation of everything else that came afterwards.
How did UCT prepare you for being a VC?
So on the one level, right, where as a VC, you get approached by all kinds of businesses from different regions, different territories, different environments, different founders, different teams, all different ways of thinking and doing things. And at a place like UCT, you're actually confronted with that every day. So I did my undergrad at UCT. I did my honors in English studies actually at UCT. So even then again, just in that postgraduate environment, which is just very different to that undergraduate environment, just in the way that people interact and the things that sort of are presented to you. That was another learning point. Then worked a bit and then went back and did a postgraduate diploma in marketing management. Again, some of the people in that particular stream hadn't been to university as well, so, and we had overseas people. So again, enriching, engaging with different people. And then when I did my MBA as well, which was also at UCT, but this time at the Waterfront, we had about 84 full-timers in that one class, and then we had another 80 plus in the modular class, so people who were doing part-time. And so I was engaging with people. Now, at this point, I'm engaging with business people, right? It's not just students.
Yeah.
So I'm engaging with people from Poland, France, Canada, China, UK. We had Zimbabwe, people from Brazil, literally all over, US, of course. Okay, I said Canada, I think. And there's more, but India. And that again unlocked further ways of sort of being able to be a chameleon. And that's, I think, the biggest part of my experience at UCT that has helped me actually engage more when I need to engage with different stakeholders, different levels, different cultures, different environments. Even when you're in, like when I went to Senegal for the first time, I took the bus from the airport. Oh, no, not to Senegal. The airport is, they built a new one, I think, or they're building a new one. But anyway, the airport that I was at was outside of the city, way outside of the city. And you can get a taxi, you can get a cab, or you can book your airport shuttles with a hotel or whatever, or you can get on this green bus where nobody speaks English and get to the middle of Dakar and then find your way where you need to be. And I chose that option because it allowed me to see how people engage with each other. And then when I went further sort of into like the purpose of the trip, I already had a level of comfort where I could adapt the way I engage, how I looked at people, how I shook hands and those sorts of things, because I had witnessed some of that already, So it's almost it's weird. Like you don't do it purposefully, but it's come to a point where I've interacted with so many different people in different environments that like being a chameleon is almost natural. And so that's, I guess, all these different experiences, how that's helped me impact being a VC, because I actually connect with founders, I connect with people, I connect with my stakeholders, so that's something I do cherish quite a bit, is just connecting with people.
Does someone need to be well educated to be a VC?
So there's different parts of being a VC, right? The one part is I need to be able to engage, speak the lingo, and engage with institutional funders, or even if you're doing retail, like fundraising from individuals, you need to still be able to engage on a certain level, right? That can be self-taught. There's also another part of VC, which is doing deals and then being operational in the fund with the administration and the management and those sorts of things. There's usually a degree of education that's required because it does demonstrate competency, right? But it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be a CA, you don't have to be a BCom. Well, I'm saying BCom, but that's a South African probably term. Bachelor's of Commerce or Bachelor's of Business or an MSc in Economics or Finance. You don't necessarily have to have all of that. You need to show that you have the competence to be intelligent. And then you need to, on top of that, be able to show that you understand the, what's the jargon that's associated with being in the industry, and you understand the trends and the economics. And then but that's just on the sort of fundraising. I'm speaking publicly, doing this, that, and the other. On the other side, when you're operational and you're doing deals, and you're supporting the portfolio companies, that's where things get a little bit more flexible. There are people who haven't necessarily gone through the same process that I have, and I haven't gone through the same process that a lot of other VCs have gone through. Yeah. But that experience that they have was successful entrepreneurs is almost invaluable in this environment, right? So it's always good to try and like on your team have at least somebody who's very entrepreneurial, who's got that experience, who's walked the journey, and they can be well educated, but they don't necessarily have to be. You can balance each other out. So yeah, you don't actually need to be sort of fairly well educated. You need to be knowledgeable. You need to be able to convey that knowledge, and then you need to be able to, I think, implement what you've learned, like in a practical manner as well. I think that's the basics of it.
Interesting. That's very interesting. Okay, so let's say, judging from your background, digital marketing expert.
Yeah.
And before that, you were doing English studies. Then you went into digital marketing.
Yeah.
Then you did your MBA. So at what point in that journey did you say, you know what, I want to get into venture capital?
The funny thing is I never ever said I wanted to get into venture capital. It kind of just happened. Right? I always had an interest in entrepreneurship. I never registered any formal businesses until much later. I DJ'd my way through varsity because I didn't have cash.
Okay.
I also did I did adverts and things as well, like as a feature. So I did that stuff as well. That paid the bills. That actually helped me get my first vehicle, which was a scooter.
Nice.
Yeah. And then from there also helped me get a camera, and then I started doing like actual paid photography. So there was always an interest in a level of entrepreneurship. But I just never felt, for whatever the reason was, I never felt ready to go the full Monty, in terms of entrepreneurship. Yeah. So, I actually worked for a few startups as well, and small businesses where things were very agile, very flexible. And then when I did my MBA, I wanted to be more strategic to whoever I worked with.
Yeah.
And I just wasn't breaking through to that level. And so I thought the MBA would help with that. But what it actually did was unlock my interest in finance, which technically was always there.
Yeah.
And innovation and entrepreneurship. So all of my electives, etc., I structured around those two things because I really like those. And, when I finished my MBA, I had options, right? It is go to the consulting thing, go back into marketing at a more senior level, or go into an environment where you can use your full skill set almost daily, and so that's when I moved into sort of the innovation space formally, working with entrepreneurs, because I was like, working at an incubator was a really interesting way.
Which incubator was that?
That was Savant, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, before we even had a fund.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I actually joined to work with the entrepreneurs. And I did that for years, and we got these companies to a certain point. But because it was hardware, science, and engineering, a lot of people VCs didn't want to back the stuff that we were doing. And so we actually ended up raising a fund because we had to, because we needed to be the people to fund these companies. We worked with them. We knew how they work. Anybody else who was eventually going to make a decision was going to make the decision as a pure financier, not as somebody who is experienced in building science and engineering businesses, right? So we raised the fund to be that experiential investor. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was that's how I got into VC. It wasn't a
straightforward thing. No, it wasn't at all. And how difficult is it to raise a fund?
Depends on the cycles, right? So the times when there's like a lot of what we call exuberance, where people are excited, people are getting real and paper money. Times are not necessarily tough, and so in those cycles, people invest, they become riskier, and they sort of look for alternative opportunities for wealth creation. So they start carving out more and more to riskier assets. And VC is a very risky asset class because it's kind of an all or nothing game. And so in those cycles, it's, you'll see a lot of new funds being raised. Africa has, always been the part of the world that gets the smallest allocations in terms of like funds. And then
why is that? I mean, we have 1 billion people here. It's not a small continent. So why are we getting such a tiny amount of the funding?
A lot of it has to do with just my perspective, but a lot of it has to do with like narratives and the historical context. So, and I really don't want to get into like clandestine things and
this is the truth talk.
I don't want to get into all of that right now, but if you look at our colonial context, right, and when we started actually gaining independence, we're still very young as independent nations, and in gaining independence, we either did it from a position where we were crippled, or we were almost sort of abandoned to find our own way. And so it's been a slog, right, to, I think, build up our continent and our countries and nation building, getting our education to the point where we actually have really good universities here, scientists and engineers coming up with new technologies. I was at we can call it a center for excellence on Thursday, where it's like one of 5 sites globally in terms of expertise and technology, and that's right here in Cape Town. So I mean, those kinds of things, it took a while, but I mean, VC in the US started a long time ago. VC in Africa, I mean, we can say like there were some VC funds in like the early 2000s, etc. But as an accelerated asset class that actually gets recognized, that probably only happened in the last 10 to 15 years, so I think people are still learning about what we can do. People are still learning about the possibilities, about the potential that we have for the future. And, we're only sort of gathering and displaying data around the real opportunity now in a much more sort of public fashion, and we're more connected now than ever. So, there are less gatekeepers as well. People didn't know what was happening in Africa. Now it's so easy to get information, etc., to verify something that somebody sees. And I think as we see more trade, we'll probably see more allocations as well. The more people do business with each other, the more comfortable they get with the business environment, and the more comfortable people are with the business environment, the easier it is for you to make a decision to invest. At the moment, there's still a lot of people who don't actually know or understand the business environments. Can I get my money out? Is it protected? Am I going to have to pay a bribe to do business? Those are simple questions, and there are usually a lot of positive answers for that, but people just still don't have it. And it's starting to sort of change now, so
very good answer. Because it's very true. We're still a very young continent. We're still, the effects of colonialism, imperialism. We're still going through that as well. There's a lot.
I mean, like the simplest thing is even our borders, right? Most of the borders we didn't create. Somebody else created the borders for us, and they created in ways that was beneficial to them. And you created instances where there's a you got these population groups. You've got Nguni, you've got whatever, different parts, right?
Yeah.
And they created these borders in a way that actually split off parts of groups within a land mass that's dominated by another group, and that causes tension and friction. And then that causes inconsistencies, so like I always look at Europe, like Germans have Germany, the Danish have Denmark.
Yeah.
Like it's like one language.
Yeah.
I spent a year in South Korea and like everything works here, and I realized nobody's arguing, right? It's one language.
Wow.
One people, one culture.
Yeah.
You might have clans and those sorts of things, and that's normal, but you know how easy it is well, not easy, but you know how much more simplified that context is,
Yeah.
than here where you've got, all of these challenges now to overcome,
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
I mean, that's not the cause of everything, but it's just an example.
Yeah. But it's still it's a very deep thing that you're mentioning, and you're bringing it up, that we're in South Africa. But what is South Africa really?
I don't know.
I mean, it's a country, and yes, there's some unity, yes, but then we've the Zulu land over there, then we've got Xhosa land over there, but now
Vendor up there.
and the vendors are up there, yeah. But then it's South Africa.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're only getting, I think, to this point now where, like, sure, somebody else made the borders, but now this is my country. This is my home, right?
Yeah.
And we'll do what it needs to take for our home to thrive. But it took a long time to get there.
Yeah.
All
right, interesting. So let's talk about Savant. For those that don't know, what is Savant?
So it's actually a group of companies. It started off 20 years ago with Nick and Kate, scientist and an engineer with MBAs, wanting to work with really early stage companies that aligned with sort of the skill set. And so that's how the initial theme of science and engineering came about. And there was always this gap within that really highly innovative science and engineering environment, where they knew quite a bit about, the highly technical things that they were working on, but there wasn't necessarily 100% sort of all of the business acumen that was required. So they were savants within their fields. But once you try to take that into a commercial realm, there was a bit of a lack, in the commercial context. And so that's where the name savant actually comes from as well.
Okay.
So working with like really smart people. And so that happened for years, and then eventually established our incubator arm, which these days does company building at like really early stages, and also administers grant funding to help support those technology companies to get from post proof of concept all the way to, here's an MVP and minimum viable prototype or product, so they can actually go to market and get data points. Then we've got Savant that was started, which is the holding company, which also does our investment readiness program. Our cohort is launching next week, which is great. So we're going to be very busy with that. And then also does sort of corporate innovation programs as well, helping corporates bring some of the interesting companies that we see sort of into their value chains. And then we've got our venture funds as well, which is managed by our fund manager. And that's really that's the all or nothing game, like backing really cool technology companies that can go global. And the cool thing is we're actually seeing that now.
Really?
Yeah.
Who are some of your best success stories that are fulfilling?
We've got a lot, eh? I mean, we've got nanofiber companies, with unique technologies, mass manufacturing interesting things for global markets. So they're exporting and sort of supplying locally as well. We've got aerospace technologies, so satellite technologies, and they are also exporting globally. I mean, from South Africa, manufacturing. We've got semiconductor companies, a company as well. They're also exporting globally. We've got a smart sensor data company, again, also exporting globally.
Wow. It sounds like that's the key thing.
We back companies that we think can go global. So they might start in South Africa or on the continent, wherever that is. It might be Morocco, might be Egypt, might be Kenya, might be Rwanda even, or Tunisia. But the core is, what can they service outside of their home territory? You know, for some of the companies, it's Africa. For some of the companies, it's US, Europe, and Asia. We've got some stuff in Australasia, which is New Zealand, and some stuff in LATAM as well. But it's really like, what can you do beyond just your home territory? Because our home markets are quite small, right? We might have some countries that have relatively decent sized populations, but then you need to look at the size of the industry that you're targeting and then your customers within that industry on the continent. And usually there's not a lot in any one country to be able to create a business that's going to give you like a 10x return as an investor. So you need to back companies that can function in multiple markets. Multiple markets and multiple industries is amazing, but multiple markets is a minimum, right? And when you start operating at that level, it's really difficult to protect yourself. And so we look for companies that also have like strong, protectable IP, intellectual property. Because if that's what's giving them their edge, it makes it easier to get people to want to work with them or to prefer to work with them, right? When you're going into new territories, most of the time you need partners, right? What's stopping your partner from doing exactly what you do? At a later stage? Nothing, right? So when you have that IP in place, it becomes a lot easier. I mean, there are commercial ways to lock in protections and those sorts of things. And you do that anyway, but if you have that IP component on top of it,
then you're completely unique. You're completely difficult to copy.
And then what you do is, as you succeed, you keep working on new IP so that you can maintain that position.
It just compounds and compounds.
Exactly.
So it sounds like, okay, please walk me through the typical investment process. So you meet a founder, maybe he's pitching on stage, and you're like, wow, okay, what happens after that until the money hits the bank?
Funnily enough, I've never met a founder on stage and then invested.
Really?
Yeah. Well, found some interesting companies, had very good conversations, but it's always about timing. And, the founders that go on stage is interesting because they usually have a degree of momentum. And so if they do a really good job on stage, there's like 1,000 different VCs trying to get into that company. And so you could lose your opportunity to maybe set the terms, right? Or you're just crowded out, or the valuation is way too high and everybody else is comfortable, but you're not, right? So for the types of companies that we look out for, there aren't a lot of those necessarily on stage. It's picking up now. But there also aren't a lot of investors that understand the cycles that these companies go through, right? And so, if somebody else is leading it and, they've already set the terms and we look at it and it's not great, then we're obviously not going to invest. Most of the deals that I've actually seen that we've done has actually come through referrals and sidebar conversations. One of our more interesting companies now that just actually completed a round now, which is like 3x what we went in, right? Can't talk about who it is, but I went to an industry function, and I'm the type of guy, when I get into a room, I like to look at people. It's difficult now because a lot of people know me, but when I get into environments where nobody knows me, it's cool, right? I look around the room and I'm like, why is that person standing on their own? They look interesting. And that's actually how I found the deal, right? We're not on their radar at all. They were not on our radar. And I just had a conversation with them, and I was like, this is interesting. Let's have a coffee. I don't drink coffee, I drink tea. So I had my tea, they had the coffee.
Yes.
And so that's how that one came about, So it's always been referrals, people who people who are doing deals into the company that maybe this is their first science and engineering investment or their high technology investment, and they're not sure, so they'll bring us on board to also sort of have a look at it and then help them with the terms and those sorts of things. So co-investors, people that are supporting entrepreneurs, people and organizations that support entrepreneurs. Those have been our best sort of referrals. And then also, obviously, we've also got our internal ecosystem. I explained our incubator and our investment readiness program and our corporate innovation program. So we also drum up quite a bit of internal pipeline as well. And those are actually great because you get to learn the entrepreneurs before you actually invest. Learn the businesses, learn the rate of pace of innovation, execution on commercial things, how well they work together, how well they work with the team. And then you get to know them as people as well, and you can make a much more informed decision, rather than just having a squarely sort of rigorous formal process. You can do deals in a short period of time, or you can take long to do deals, right? To get to know people.
Let's say someone that you already have a relationship with them, how soon can a deal be done? And also for the opposite, for someone that's completely a cold lead that you've just met, how long could it take?
We've done deals in the space of 6 weeks in some cases. Right? But that's where we've actually seen the companies progress from within the programs that we run and those sorts of things.
Okay.
And the timing was right in terms of what they were looking for and what we were ready to do. So from that perspective, that's the quickest that I've seen. In some instances, it actually has taken as long as maybe a year to do a deal. But that's not, okay, we're doing this deal now. That's a different story. I'm talking about I meet you. I'm like, we have our conversations. I find what you do quite interesting. I do some light due diligence, and I say, this is a challenge, this is a challenge, and this is a challenge. So maybe if you can work on that, we can see what happens. And you keep the engagement open. And then you hit a point where, okay, cool. You've done all these things. I've seen how you're growing. Let's actually do proper due diligence, and then that can go into a process. So I would say the longest from that point that we've done is probably about 3 months, and it's not necessarily the due diligence that takes long, right? Because once you have all your information, it's easy to process. It's easy to meet who you need to meet, talk, understand, write up your investment memo, go through the process. That can be done within the space of 4 to 6 weeks, right? What tends to sometimes take a little bit longer is the contracting process. And there's various ways you can try to mitigate that, but when it comes down to it, you're always going to have a level of debate in the actual final wording of contracting, and depending on how many stakeholders you have that need to be considered, that's what sometimes makes deals take long. It's that contracting leg. Managing all the different investment voices, new and existing, plus your strategic advisors, plus your founders. Maybe if there's an ESOP in there, and you're working really closely with the team members in that ESOP, like there's a lot that you need to manage. And if you don't manage that process well enough, you're gonna keep getting jammed up with bottlenecks during the contracting process.
Yeah.
So contracting is the biggie in terms of delays, and then maybe the ramp up to readiness for an investor to start their due diligence, like what I spoke about earlier.
I actually wanted to ask something on due diligence. What are some of the top things that you look at that if they're not there, you're not going to do it, or some red flags during the DD that you really, really look at?
Yeah. So we like to look at technology. So like 70% of the team are scientists and engineers with an MBA or an MCOM or something commercial at a postgraduate level. So most of the team actually understands the business and the tech.
Okay.
So we go in, we really do try to find holes and really dig into the capabilities of the tech. And then where we don't find that, or where we don't have the expertise rather to go deep enough, we actually have a nice network of people who are experts in a number of different fields who then assist us further, right? So you need to know that to some degree there's a level of IP that is protectable. And then the other part of it is understanding that you as a team or somebody in the team who's adequately incentivized to stay for the long term has the right commercial skill set to sell this business. Because selling is the biggest part of this, so you need to have somebody who understands the industry, who understands how to sell to the customer in front of you right now.
Yeah.
And then within that customer, who are the people and what are the levers? So that if anything changes within that customer, how can I still maintain a relationship with that potential customer? But then also knowing who else in the industry I can talk to and when and what they need. So there's a real industry level of knowledge, depth of knowledge actually that you need to have in the team. And if you don't have that, then it's a big flag, because you essentially, the stuff that we invest in is it's new technologies, or new industries. So it's a tough sell to get any of that going. So you need to have a very strong commercial aspect to your team. Those are the main things that we look at. And then we also do speak to your other investors, understand what your team dynamics are, how you are as human beings. I like to ask trick questions to the team, not to trick them out, but just to see how they respond. If I say something that might be construed as offensive, how are you going to respond to that? I actually don't want to make examples, because then people are going to know how to react to it. But I like to try to push a few buttons, right? Because you're going to get to a point down the line where you're going to have to push buttons, just because it's the nature of how things are, right? Or maybe there's friction because there was an information disclosure that didn't happen, or whatever the case is. And at that point in time, things might be tense. So if things get super tense right now, at the point where you're still being nice to me, and looking for money, once you have the money, how are you going to behave? That might be different, right? So that's one part of it. And then I think the other biggest part of it is we also need to be comfortable enough to know that we can be in a relationship with you for the next 10 years, right? Because nobody invests now and exits 2 years later. Well, I mean, not say nobody, people do that. Those are engineered circumstances, which is great if you can get into them. But if you're investing in an early stage business, typically, you're going to be there for a while. depending on the stage, you could be there for 3 years before like any exit conversation starts. It could be 5 years, could be 7 years in some cases.
Yeah.
And then an exit conversation, could be anywhere from 2 to 3 years, right?
Just negotiating the terms of the exit.
Because it starts, you need to plunk the idea and it needs to feed its way through whoever's acquiring the business or your stake in the business. They need to feed it through their operational or bureaucratic channels, and then there needs to be buy-in, and then there needs to be the follow-on process. Okay, now we're going to do this. What happens in our particular organization when we actually go and do M&A? Then they need to go through those processes, and then you get to a point where you've agreed on high-level terms, right? And you've worked through things, and then you're at a point where this is happening. We just have another 6 months worth of contracting finalization.
Oh, contracting again.
So it's, and it depends on the size of the organization. It's usually an organization that's buying either your stake or the business, or how much they are buying of the business and at what price, point that's going to impact what that exit looks like. So, so we need to know that we can work with you through the good times, through the bad times, and through those delicate conversations towards the end, when it's time for us to part ways. So,
yeah, no, it sounds like there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that goes on.
Yeah, so a lot of people, this is the interesting point, a lot of people only see the deals and how much got invested at what valuation, but there's a lot, right? So, like as investors, you co-invest, so you put in your own money, but you're also putting in significantly more from other people's money, right? And because you raise a fund and it's pooled money essentially that you're managing on behalf of someone else. And so you've got free rein to do the deals that you need to do, but you are still also being quizzed and reporting on all of those deals at any given point in time. So access to information is super critical. But that's the kind of stuff that when people just read about deals done into companies that they don't understand.
Yeah.
You see a deal announced today, but, the hours, the money, that went into that deal that you're seeing now probably started 1.5 years ago. So.
What's the biggest challenge that you've ever had to overcome in your career as a VC?
It was the biggest challenge that I've had to overcome. To be honest with you, it was doing things like this. I never used to speak publicly. I hated it actually.
Really?
Yeah, I hated it.
For an ex-DJ.
No, but you didn't have to speak, you don't have to display intellect. You just need to be able to read the crowd and the energy and sway things,
Yeah.
Okay, I got this kind of demographic. Let's see if this works. Okay, put on that record or whatever, and then just keep the energy, and then you manage the energy throughout the night, right? Depending on how long your set is, and like that's very different, right?
Yeah.
Now it's like, okay, now I got to display intellect publicly, okay. And then, there was always like an element of self-doubt with myself.
Yeah.
I think that's the main thing that sort of held me back for a long time. And then I hated sales. But when I got into VC, I actually realized I was always selling. Every conversation that you have, you're either selling yourself as a VC, or you're selling your portfolio, and you're selling yourself as a VC to founders, you're selling yourself as a VC to investors.
Yes.
So you always literally just selling. And so business development became really interesting to me, because in being forced to do it and doing it without knowing that I was doing it, I realized that I was good at it. Same with public speaking, and those two things I battled with like probably most of my career, even just outside of VC.
So how did you overcome it?
Joined the VC fund and I was just forced to do it.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. It's funny, like before I before I got into even the innovation space, even when I was still doing my MBA, I would go to just these ecosystem events, and I would listen to the speakers and stuff. And there was an organization called Acro, and they had hosted Zach George at the time, and this is before Launch Africa, right?
Okay.
And then he was, or at least before Launch Africa was public, in my view, I think. And he was talking about his days in Wall Street, and all of that, right? And there was a heavy emphasis on that. You don't see that now, but back then he was still starting the narrative, right? And so I would actually watch guys like that, and I was just genuinely interested in watching. And when it was my turn to really start thinking about what to do in this space, I had to be out there, right? And then I started thinking back to my days of watching Zach George and all these other guys, and I was like, okay, you start the circuit at this level, and then you start moving to the next stage of, oh, this is a much bigger crowd. Okay, this is more public. Oh, okay, that's actually how it worked out for me in terms of public speaking. And then getting on podcasts like this, right? I was super nervous with my first one. I was really nervous, and it wasn't even in person. It was like it was a virtual one, man. But I ended up having so much fun on that. So I think that's maybe a piece of advice to anybody, right? If you're feeling uncomfortable with anything, just actually go through it. See what you learn about yourself, even if it's something that you never do again.
Yeah.
There's so much you're going to learn about yourself in that process. And so that's how. Sorry, that's a long answer for a
That's a great answer, yeah. And I was going to ask you a word of advice that you'd give to aspiring entrepreneurs or founders. And you've kind of just touched on that to say, if you're faced with the challenge and you're afraid or you're scared or you're nervous to do something, just go through it. What's the worst that's going to happen?
Yeah. I can, are we wrapping up? Is that like?
No.
Okay. So you can ask me for a word of wisdom later. I'll add to that.
Oh, you've got another one.
Oh, it's kind of somewhat related to that, I guess, in a way. But yeah.
Okay. So we're almost wrapping up.
Okay.
I want us to just chat as someone that's deeply involved in technology and, like what you've been saying. What's your take on AI?
I am AI. No. Yo, dude, so much. Like, what level are we talking? Like, we're talking about the infrastructure that supports AI. We're talking about developing actually AI. We're talking about AI as a part of your product. You're talking about AI as just part of your process, or you as an individual using AI and then putting it in the outputs from that into your process. Like, there's so much.
There's a lot. Okay,
I just want to say that some businesses will never need AI. Everybody says you need AI today to be relevant. There's some businesses that just don't need AI.
Yeah.
But most businesses will benefit from AI. Actually, almost all businesses will benefit from AI. But so you don't necessarily have to have it. But if you're intent on growing your business, being sustainably competitive 10 to 20 years into the future, AI is one of those things right now that you need to embrace, right? To either come up with new products, to do proposals, to manage your workflows, to manage your staff and your equipment, to just be more efficient with your costs, and just being a more efficient organization, getting things done quicker, getting things done at a lower cost. AI is pervasive, right? And I don't think we can ignore it. It's like not having a website. Like you tell somebody now you got a business and they say, oh, what's the website? And I'll read up on it. And you say, oh, I don't have a website. People switch off. And it's like that level of relevance. That's where AI is heading. There's going to be a lot of AI busts companies that just don't make it, that don't make sense commercially, or the tech just isn't there, or they can't catch up to the leaders. And there's going to be a few proper big winners, and everybody's just going to be using the platforms that those winners provide. But AI is here and it's real. And we just can't ignore it.
How do you feel about people in tech, for example, that maybe they're still learning how to code, they're still at the very beginning of their careers, and this thing is coming out? How can they use it to their advantage and not over rely on it as well? Yeah, how can they do that?
That's a really good question, right? So it's at a point, like if you're a technologist, you can actually rely on AI to do base things for you, so that you don't have to do it and you can focus on the more technical things. So I'm seeing instances where there's massive amounts of data being generated and people don't have the time to sift through it, and so they're asking AI to do the basic stuff, and then from there they can interpret and do the things that they need to do, right? And then they can add the expertise on top of that. Now that works for them and it works well because they are experts, right? AI will catch up at some point or whatever, but for a long time, there's always going to be experts that are impacted positively by AI. More challenging now is if you haven't already developed that level of expertise. So now you're going to make a judgment call about where you're going to focus your energy, right? Do you focus your energy on learning more languages, or do you focus your energy on finding out which languages are going to power AI in the future? And even that, how relevant is that going to be when AI becomes self-learning? And it is in some cases, it is already, so you got to look at that, and then you got to look at, okay, cool, how can I position myself to be literate in some kind of technical proficiency to work on and with AI? And that's what the mindset focus needs to be, not like which language should I focus on, or it should be like, where's the trend of AI going? The stuff that somebody made an interesting point. They said Star Trek had the first iPad. So if you look back at those old school Star Treks, even there's the animated versions, and Star Trek from the 70s and prior. I think the 60s was maybe the first one. They've got the touchpads, right? They had conceptualized that then. The technology wasn't there. It's there now. It is there, in part due to Steve Jobs and a few other things that enabled him to do what he needed to do at Apple. But that rate of pace is so much more faster now. So the learning and the changes that the industry and that AI is going to go through it's miles ahead. So it's really difficult to predict. The best advice I can say is go to school. And then while you're at school, explore beyond what the curriculum is giving you. That's the biggest thing. The curriculum, if you look at schools, right, it's an enabling environment that you can use school to get you into a room that you otherwise wouldn't get into. I'm a student, I want to learn about this, can you talk to me? People open up to that. You'll be surprised. Organizations will up to that. You can get into programs, you can learn a lot of things. But a curriculum is something that somebody plans through in detail. It then needs to go through some kind of committee, and then it needs to be approved by that institution, and that institution needs to submit it to some other level of bureaucracy outside the institution that then allows it to get acknowledged as a national qualification standard or an international qualification standard. And then it goes back to the university, and then they go implement it, or the school or whatever, right? So that means you could have like a 1 to 2 year drag on the development of any new curricula.
True.
And at the rate of pace that the world is going now, by the time you finish that qualification, which could be 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 years post, you actually getting into that program, which was designed 2, 3 years before.
Before that, yeah.
The world could be a very different place.
Yeah.
So you need to do what's outside of the curriculum that keeps you relevant for where the curriculum is going. Where the world is going. School is also just an opportunity to meet other people.
Yeah.
To learn from other people.
Yeah.
And other people tell you about new technologies and new trends. And you go research it. I can't tell you how many how many of the computer science people that I spoken to. I didn't study computer science or anything. I just like people. But how many of them were doing things that was beyond their curricula? And then when they got into industries, they quickly rose to become leaders in their companies and leaders in their fields.
Because they were always learning outside.
Learn outside, see where the tech is going. Make your own assessments based on your knowledge of what these trends mean, and then sort of you'll get to the level of proficiency by just looking beyond all the time. But you could still get a very good base out of like a formal education system, right? That's nothing to be scoffed at. So that piece of paper that you get is always going to be a testament to a level of intelligence and capability that you have.
Yeah.
Especially when you haven't proven that yet in a sort of real world environment. So,
last word of advice to a founder who's listening to this.
Go to school. No. You're going to be tested, right? You will be tested. And you are going to go through lows. It's not just founders, it's investors, it's everybody. You're going to go through lows, right? And you always need to look at what you strategically have at your disposal. For somebody else, it might be nothing. But for you and what you know, if you have the highest level of introspection that you can achieve, like it could be everything, right, that you need to make it through that phase, to be able to do the levels of negotiations, whatever that you need, to get to where you need to be. So you're going to go through like lows, and you might be on the cusp of like losing everything. That's not a friendly journey on either side of the fence, but persevere, and there's almost nothing, unless you're doing illegal things, there's almost nothing that you can't come back from. Right? So go make your mistakes and don't be afraid to make mistakes. Because that's the only way you're going to learn, the only way you're going to grow. Right? If Elizabeth Holmes had not been illegal, you know the Theranos story?
Yeah.
Like she could have recovered, right? She dropped out.
She's kind of recovered now.
Spice. I guess in a way. But like she couldn't recover because that was a dark path she went on. But if your path is focused on more enlightenment and like legitimate achievement, don't be afraid. Because, when you come out of that, even if it doesn't work, right? As long as you learn from whatever that failure is actually a success. So like whatever gets thrown at you professionally or personally, like, you need to take that and learn from it and grow. Like life will give you things, but what can you build on top of what life gives you?
That's deep. That's so deep.
Sorry, man. I didn't mean to be deep.
Awesome.
Yeah.
How can people reach you?
Man, LinkedIn is great, eh? I don't always respond just because things are flooded, but LinkedIn is great. You can catch me in the streets of Mzansi. But LinkedIn is good. LinkedIn is good. I'm happy to always, and if people see me out and they recognize me, or if I recognize them, I'm always happy to chat. If I don't get back to you immediately, it's not that I've written you off or that I don't like you or there's something that's off. It's literally a factor of time. Like this VC space is crazy in terms of what you need to do and meetings that you have. And it's like, people book 30-minute meetings with you and you try to force that meeting. You speak fast, speak intelligently, get to the point, try and compress that to 15 minutes because you don't have a lot of time, because, like for instance, I have like 3 or 4 meetings that I plan for max in a day, and then other meetings pop up, but I still need to do my work, right? And so when I don't respond immediately, just note that, there's a lot happening and it's not you. It's me.
Oh, I've heard that line before.
But LinkedIn is good.
Awesome.
Yeah, so my name, surname on LinkedIn, you should find me. I think there's only one of me, which is great.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time.
No, really thank you, man. This was actually a good chat.
Yeah, it really was. I enjoyed it a lot. Thank you.
Awesome.
Cheers.
Thanks. Ciao.